Hi, my name's Natalie, and this is my Persuasive Speech, and this is my audience. My mom is virtual. Have you ever had a guest in your home that just won't leave? And they won't even take the hint that it is time to go? Well, much like this illustration here, that is a very example of that, is happening in the US Congress. Many of the people in Congress have been serving for 15 plus years. And it's time for a change. It's time to have new ideas and younger generations serving. And that's why I'm calling for term limits on congressmen and senators. As a US citizen, it's very important for us to stay informed and know who is serving us and are they serving us to their best abilities. And so today I'll be covering a few topics, them being statistics to show where the problem is at, and then I will go into what happens to the brain as it ages, and lastly I will talk about what the founding fathers had intended for Congress. Let's get into it. So this is from pewresearch.org, and we'll be taking a look at the 118th column, because that is the year 23 through 24, so that is the year we are in. And first we'll take a look at baby boomers. Baby boomers are the ages 59 to 77. Let's first look at the House. The House, 45% of them are baby boomers. And now let's look at the Senate here. And 66% of them are baby boomers. And if you know anything about the House, that means 66 of them are baby boomers. So now let's also talk about the silent generation. The silent generation is ages 78 through 95. And as you can see, there are quite a few of them still serving in Congress. And you may be wondering, why does this matter? Well, it's time for them to retire. According to MadisonTrust.com, the average age for a US citizen to retire is age 64. And as you can see, over half of them in both houses are over the age of 64. So now we've talked about them being quite old. Let's see how many years that they've served. For the House of Representatives, on average, this is for the 118th Congress as well, 8.5 years of the average, and for Senate it's 11.2. And all this information is from CRC report. And for the House, the term is for 2 years, and for the Senate is 6 years term. So don't let that fool you though, because some have been serving for way longer. According to Senate.gov, Charles Grassley, this man right here, has served for 43 years in the Senate, 6 years in the House, and he is currently 90 years old, and he is still serving his country. So now that I've talked about the statistics, let's move on to what happens to the brain as it ages, because quite frankly, a lot of them are getting pretty old. So according to Columbia University Medical Center, the brain starts to shrink at ages 30 through 40, and it starts to shrink more rapidly at ages 60. And the areas that shrink the quickest are your frontal lobe right here and your hippocampus right here. And those two areas are responsible for your cognitive functions. Cognitive functions are your ability for like memory and ability to learn and other such things along those lines. And also, Columbia University Medical Center did state that as a person gets older, they tend to have more physical and cognitive problems and tend to typically need care by a loved one or a professional. And you may be wondering, what does this have to do with Congress? Well, many people in Congress are above the age 60, so their memory has gotten worse, they're slower processing information, and they're decreasing attention span, which all of this is really bad when you have to serve your country, write bills, pass bills, and other such things, and serve on committees. So now that we have talked about what happens to the brain, let's talk about what did the founding fathers have to say about running Congress? Well, they intended for congressmen and senators to only serve for a limited amount of time. It was only a part-time job. According to the Washington Post, they would serve, but not for very long, and then they would just go back to their farms, businesses, or whatever trade they were doing. Also, the Washington Post talked about how much they made, because quite frankly, there has to be a reason for why they would want to stay serving for so long. Well, it's the money for sure, because right now, congressmen and senators make an average around $200,000 a year, which that's a lot of money, especially considering that most Americans make nowhere close to that. It's about 90% more than what most Americans are making. And the founding fathers had it set up as a part-time job, and they did get paid, but not very much then either. It was about $6 per passing bill, so not very much money considering the lump sum that they make now. So now that I've talked about that, let's move on to the conclusion. I'll go over the points I restated, or the points I already stated. The first points were statistics to show where the problem lies in how long they've been serving and the age groups and the generations. And then I talked about the brain and how it ages, because a lot of them are over the age of 60 and losing cognitive functions, and that is a huge problem. And then lastly, I talked about the founding fathers and what they wanted for this system that they set up, and how it was your patriotic duty to serve your country, but not for that amount of time, because they felt you get power hungry over spending so much time there. And so with all that being said, it's time for a change in America. We need to get new generations serving us. We need to have new ideas. We need to have people who know what they're still doing in offices. And so if you agree with that, I'm calling for term limits for Congress.